Sure thing. So I'm Alison Kamhi, and I am running for Palo Alto School Board. So I wanted to meet with you to say hello and talk about some of my campaign priorities.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Sure. So I am your neighbor. I live on Stanford Avenue,
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
and
Okay.
yes.
How long have you lived in College Terrace?
So I actually live on the other side of Stanford Avenue. I'm in Olmsted Terrace.
Oh, okay.
On the Stanford side, but my mom lives on the College Terrace side of Stanford Avenue. Um, so
Are you a professor or
my husband teaches in the psych department.
oh, okay. Very cool.
Yes. We were one of the first houses to be built. So that was January of 2011.
I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my son's friends um was also kind of like a junior professor and they also got housing like right along Stanford.
Yep. That's where we are. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
Um, that was an incredible opportunity. We've been really happy there. So yes, I do immigrants' rights policy by day, and through that work, have learned that all change is local. So that's why I'm running to serve our neighborhoods, our community, our families.
Mhm.
I am first and foremost an engaged parent. So I have a daughter at Green Middle School. So I've been in the district for a while, and also a son in kindergarten at Escondido. So looking at another 13 years.
Okay.
Um, my daughter did the neighborhood side of Escondido, and my son is in Spanish immersion. So I have windows into
Well, my
both
kids
sides.
also did, well, we lived in the same place, so my kids also did the same thing. So
Oh, is that right?
Escondido Green, yeah. I mean, of course, I live in College Terrace,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're like
There you are.
yeah.
Yep. Um, and so volunteered a number of different ways at the site school level, where I was room parent for years. Also at the board level, I served on the ad hoc school board committee in 2022 on childcare, and
Mm.
that's where I worked to increase aftercare options for folks in the district. So low income, English as a second language, foster care, unhoused, and special needs youth, and that was a really incredible experience. I thought, gosh, this is a table I think I have something to offer at. I'm an attorney, got to know members of the board, teachers, the president of the teachers union, principals through that experience. And it came from there had been a decision made by the district to close fourth and fifth grade aftercare options. So I started going to board meetings, and I applied and became one of only a couple of parents on that committee. We made the pie bigger. So not only did we not close aftercare options, but we expanded them.
Mm.
I also co-founded a position on gun violence prevention at the Palo Alto PTA council level. And so there have been working with a fellow parent um, and a neighbor on being at back to school nights and doing community education for all of our families about how to be safer. So
Mm.
safe storage. Um, and I'm also an experienced attorney, so I started my career representing youth here in Santa Clara County.
Okay.
And to represent a kid means that you represent them not just in their family court proceeding, not just in their probate court proceeding, not just in their immigration court proceeding, but also in their IEP in school, also in
They're
anti-bullying
what?
issues. IEP,
What is that?
like there's like a special needs folks are placed on
Oh.
plans. You're meeting with their teachers about their performance and
What does
accommodation.
IEP stand for?
Individualized education plan, I think.
Oh, okay.
Um, um, I should know that, but I think that's what it is.
Okay. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Um, and so come to this from a child protective
mm,
perspective, but also a child empowerment perspective. So how are
mm,
we protecting our kids, but also how are we um, enabling them to advocate for what they need. Um, After that, I worked at Stanford. I taught in the immigrants law clinic for a couple years. And then for the last 11 years, I've been doing policy work at a nonprofit in San Francisco. And there I'm doing policy on behalf of primarily low income immigrant families and youth. And so I say all that to say that I come to this as an engaged parent, but also with a lot of experience, both working directly with children and also working with big systems.
mm.
So from a good governance perspective. And we'll say just a couple words about my priorities and then happy to see if
Sure.
you have any questions.
Yeah.
I have a priority of academic opportunities for all. So making sure that we're supporting our struggling students, but also providing challenges for our advanced kids.
Mhm.
Um, Second priority is safety, and I define that very broadly. So investing in mental health services, special needs, also anti-bullying, strong hate speech protocols, cell phone use guidelines in schools, bike safety, and gun violence prevention. And then lastly, trust and transparency. So really trying to make sure that we as a district are really communicating with parents, teachers, staff, others, and really bringing us together on our shared values. So thinking through our decision making, for example, being very clear about who's making the decisions, what's the timeline, where
Mhm.
are the points for input, how will that feedback be considered. And then as somebody who does policy, I know that there's the policy piece, but then there's the implementation piece. So
Mhm.
once you implement something, where is there continued room for feedback, and where are the opportunities for course correction?
Okay. Okay, great. Well, I love that you were a room parent. My wife also did that. So I think,
Oh, that's great.
I think what makes Paul so amazing is the school's amazing. Actually, it's the parents, right? I think it's the active parents involved. So I think it's great that you're participating. Um, and when you say you talked about like opportunities for all. Um, a lot of times, especially in our community, there's a big focus on the opportunity gap, and people want to minimize that opportunity gap. So, what is your feeling about minimizing the opportunity gap versus trying to give opportunities for all? And how do you balance the two?
Yeah, great question. I mean, that's a lot of what the priority is about, is making sure that we are, in fact, providing opportunities for all. So I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think we're a well-resourced district, and we can and should be focusing on the fact that we still have a lot of folks who are not meeting grade level, and many of whom are from historically underrepresented groups. And we need to be to talk about that for a second, I think we need to be doing a lot more early intervention. So identifying folks early on, providing support.
Mhm.
In elementary school. I also think we could be doing a better job in middle school of using that flex period to provide additional support.
Mhm.
But I don't think that that is in tension with offering advanced classes to kids. We can and do offer a wide variety of classes at
Mhm.
our high school level. And I know we have a demand for those classes, and I don't see that intention with continuing to provide support, and in fact increasing support and early intervention for kids who are struggling.
Okay. Um, I don't follow school. Although I have kids in the school district, I don't follow as closely as you do. But Uh, I heard about like multivariable calculus. People want to get rid of multivariable calculus. What was the whole rationale behind that?
You mean getting rid of it or adding back in, or?
Was it getting? I thought the controversy was get when they got rid of it. Was that the controversy, or was it adding? I don't know. I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
follow
yeah,
closely
no
enough.
worries. Yeah, and so certainly current board members would be could talk a little bit more to it, but yeah, it was a dual enrollment, so kids could it was offered within the Palo Alto Unified School
Mhm.
District course curriculum, um, and uh, and that was discontinued, and so now students have an opportunity to take it through Foothill, so it's either online or in person at Foothill, and there are many people who would like it to be offered um, within the bell schedule. So finding a way to have a teacher to offer it within the bell schedule. There's about 85 kids, is my understanding, who take calculus their junior year,
Yeah.
and so could potentially take, if they were following the sequence, could potentially take multivariable calculus their senior year if we offered it. Again, many of those folks do
Mhm.
take it through the Foothill option. In the past, we've actually had a classroom designated, so somebody from Foothill would come to Pally and teach it.
Mhm.
That's not happening this year, and so people
So
do have to either go.
so do you think that's a good thing, or do you think it's a bad thing?
That we don't. So I understand that the district moved it to be outside of the course offerings because the person was not a Palo Alto district employee. So my understanding is that we would want either to figure out a way to do it dual enrollment or have a district teacher to teach that class. And I would see myself as a representative of our constituents, and there are many classes, advanced classes that kids want. So it's not just multivariable calculus. There's also AP US government that a lot of people
Mhm.
want, language 4 classes. And so if kids want it and we have a teacher who wants to teach it, I think we should offer it.
Hmm. Okay. Um, um, so in terms of getting rid of multivariable calculus, was that a good move by the school board to get rid of it, or was it a, I guess I just I wasn't clear on what your position was on that.
What my position was on getting rid of it. So, I mean,
Well,
I think people, um, I think that if we have a teacher that wants to teach it, I think that we should offer it. I know that there are a lot of different things that go into whether we should teach a class. There's an impact assessment, right? Of how will
mhm.
that class being offered affect other students?
Yeah.
I think that goes into it. It does make sense to me that we would want to make sure that we have a teacher who is either dual enrolled in the ways that that's required or that is employed by the district. But again, I think if there's a demand for that class and we have a teacher to teach it, then I think we should
Okay.
explore that
I,
opportunity.
I thought the controversy was like they got rid of multivariable calculus, and I thought again, I don't follow this that closely, so I could
Mhm.
be off. And I thought that um, that uh, they were also like saying you don't get credit on your transcript now for classes you took outside of um, the school district. And I could be off, but that's what I remember. But is that correct or not?
Yeah. So two different issues. One is who's teaching multivariable calculus, and the second is whether college courses can count towards your GPA.
Yeah.
And yeah, happy to talk about the latter too. So right now, you can use the outside college credit to count towards your high school requirements, but it's not counted towards your GPA. And so, there's a question of, whether those courses should be allowed to be counted towards your GPA, and currently they're not
Mhm. That
counted
was a
towards
change, right?
them. Sorry, yeah,
Oh, okay. So
that was a change.
did you support that change, or do you support it or not support it?
So I think that, I think we're a well-resourced district and we should offer courses within our bell schedule. So I think if people want classes, we should see if we can offer them within our bell schedule. I think that uh, there are a number of amazing course offerings at our community colleges that people should take advantage of. Those are still reported on your transcript. They can still count towards your graduation requirement. But I do think that that causes a lot of paperwork, and there are folks who kind of try to work around the system to take maybe a class that's easier somewhere else, but then gets weighted differently. And so I think if there are classes that people want, we should try to explore it within the bell schedule and allow those classes. I mean, they're still offered. People should take advantage of them. But no, I don't think that they should be counted towards your GPA.
Okay. And should the district have hired someone for multivariable calculus, or you think that um that it's better the way it is in terms of having them go to Foothill, wherever they go?
I think if it's like I said, I mean, I think if there's a class that our constituents want, and if we have a teacher to teach it, then my understanding is the role of a board member is you can't mandate that a class be taught, but that,
Really? You can't? I didn't know that. Why not?
why not? Um,
I mean,
uh,
that seems like a fundamental power that a board should have, right? I mean, if the board doesn't decide, then who decides?
um, so I, I think that there's a curriculum committee that would bring a class forward. I think you can certainly set guidance to
But the committee is
explore.
appointed by the board, or it's just some random committee that that decides?
I don't think it's a random committee. I think that there would be a curriculum committee. I think you would look at the instructional leads from the math instructional leads. I think you would be looking at the folks who
Oh,
are putting
so
together this.
so it's all driven by the teachers, but not the parents.
Um, well, I think that I think the folks work in concert, right? So again, I think that we need to be responsive to the needs of what folks want, and explore whether we can do that, right?
Okay. No, I guess I was just trying to understand because I thought the way it works, and you know, I again I don't study the school district that closely, but I
Yeah.
thought the way it works was I thought the school board, the voters voted in the school board, and the school board controls the superintendent, who controls other stuff. But I thought that the school board actually had control over like what courses are taught in our school district. I had no idea that they had no control over it. That's something new to me.
Oh, I mean, I'm happy to go back and forth on this, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that they have no control. But yeah, it would be something that I would want to be listening to I mean, I have been doing my homework on this and meeting with math teachers. I've been talking to the
Mhm.
teachers that teach the courses. I've been talking to the students that take the
Yeah.
courses. I've been talking to current board members, prior board members, teachers union. I met with the undergrad uh, math curriculum head at Stanford, been meeting with people at the state. So I think there's a lot that goes into the curriculum, and I would be really leaning on when we've talked about some of who
Mhm.
I would be looking to for those answers. But I do think that that is a place that we would really want to be looking um, to teachers and again to constituent input on what students want.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I agree with that, but I also feel that um, if the school doesn't have control of the curriculum, it really needs to get control. And that, um, my perspective is that um, I'm totally for, and I really strongly support the idea of opportunity for all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, my feeling, having my kids gone through the district and whatnot, is there's a bit of a cap, actually. And that, um, so I'll give my own kind of background. So I,
Please,
I
yeah.
was I was exceptionally good at math and science and stuff like that. STEM, I was really strong at that. But I really sucked wind at Spanish. I mean, I got a D in Spanish. I mean, it was just I struggled at foreign languages. I thought it was Spanish. I took Japanese later, and it's the same issue. So it wasn't the language, it was me. So it was not my forte. But I kicked ass in other things, right? Like math and whatnot. So my high school is not a very wealthy area, so I I easily outstripped my high school, so I had to go to community college and all that kind of stuff. But I think the same thing happens in our community, right? I think and for some other kids, maybe they're awesome at foreign languages, right? Like my wife speaks 5 languages, so for her it's no
Right.
no big deal. But for me, I just struggle, and so I think it's really important to offer the breadth and depth of and I like the idea of opportunity for all, but I want to see it's actually happening, right? And enabled and easy for kids, right, to do this. And I worry when there's the artificial limits because a lot of times what I've heard, and this is feedback, I have like a lot of interns who so they call them give me feedback about
Mhm.
what they think about the school district. And you know, there seems to be this push to have no opportunity gap. And the way you get no opportunity gap is you chop off the top so that basically kids are closer together. And I think that's the wrong way, in my opinion. I think I'm actually okay with an opportunity gap because some kids like I was a very studious kid, so I worked crazy hard, and I had friends who played video games all day long, and school was not for them, right? They were like doing something else, and to expect the same to expect no gap between the students, I think is ridiculous because some kids are smarter, some kids work harder, right? Some kids do start with more, but to chop it off at the top, right? So that all kids like so that you don't have these extreme between kids and the out and expecting the same kind of outcome. Like there's no outcome gap, I think is, as a parent, and this is the whole reason why we moved to Palo Alto was because we wanted the best education possible for our kids. And to me, it was a little bit disappointing to see this push to chop off the top to make sure that there isn't a gap between kids. And I thought It just seemed kind of the wrong way of doing it.
I hear you. And that's why it's one of my campaign priorities, right? I mean, I went to public school
Hmm.
and had the opportunity to take advanced classes, and it
Hmm.
prepared me for Stanford, Harvard Law School, and beyond, right? And it was because of the rigor that I was able to be exposed to through a public high school. So I think that I think it's critically important that we challenge our advanced kids. I know we offer a lot of classes,
But
and I know that there are some that we don't, right? And
yeah.
so that's why, I guess, just to be very clear about what I was saying before, I mean, I want to be careful what I as a person promise. I'm one, board member, um, were I to be elected. But yes, I mean, board members do vote they do vote on curriculums, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. And it's absolutely something I want to explore, which is why it's one of my campaign priorities, right? Is making sure that we are serving folks, that we're serving folks in our district, right?
I just feel like there's like there's the outcome gap, right? That people talk about a lot about this outcome gap. And then there's opportunity gap. And I actually feel that our kids are actually a lot more talented than um, like and I think we are in an increasingly more demanding world where the skills of people in the workforce have to be at least a lot higher. So we need a more educated workforce. And I kind of feel that, our district has been really pushing hard on this outcome gap and less on, because people are different. Like I suck when at foreign languages, but I was great at math. And then I'm tapped out, I'm capped on the math side. I mean, I'll probably be remedial Spanish, but I kicked ass at math, and so like I don't know, it just seemed like we want every kid to achieve as much as possible, and we should just accept that there will be outcome gaps. And to be honest, what is wrong with outcome gaps? Because people are not born the same. They have different effort level, right? I mean, I've seen it. Like, and you've probably seen it too when you grew up, right? There are kids who are, I mean, you were obviously very studious and you did well and you were smart and all that kind of good stuff. But you probably had classmates who just were total screwballs, right? And to assume that you're going to have the same outcome as someone who was a total screwball makes no sense, right?
Yeah, so happy to say a couple of things there. I mean, to me, it's that we are such a well-resourced district. Just to speak about students who are struggling,
Mhm.
we're such a well-resourced district and still have um, we still have folks who are not meeting grade level, right? Like that to me that's not an outcome gap. That's oh gosh, what can we do better as a school district
Mhm.
to be supporting struggling students? Or we
Yeah.
have, lower rates of folks meeting
Yeah.
grade level for certain historic underrepresented groups than our neighboring districts. So that to me, I think is a solvable problem. I think it is well within what our
Mhm.
district can do to be much better about identifying youth early on and
Yeah.
providing
But it seems like
services.
there's so much emphasis of at least the years that my kids are going through the district to trim the top, right? Just to reduce this gap. And it just seemed like a really bizarre way of solving the outcome gap, right? And so that's why I'm just trying to understand where you stand on it because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in our community, I mean, a lot of people in our community, like when we moved to Palo Alto, we downsized, right? We went from a 3 bedroom to a
Right.
2 bedroom,
Right.
right? I had to sell my pool table, right? I mean, our house was so small. So like a lot of parents sacrificed to be here
Mhm.
because they want the outstanding education. And then when we come here, it's incredibly disappointing to see that, oh no, we're going to like hold back your kid so that we don't have this outcome gap. And as a parent, you want the best for your kids, and it's incredibly disappointing when you see that in the district.
Yeah, and can I ask you as a parent, I mean, did you see that in math? Did you see that in language arts? Did you see it
Well, I
throughout?
had my
What has
kids
it felt?
complain about it. So I had my
Sorry?
kids complain. I had my kids complain about like, hey, what the heck, right?
Okay.
And it seemed like there's this emphasis to make sure that there weren't kids that were like having a bigger outcome gap than other kids. I'm like, well, what's wrong with that, right? Like I didn't get well, I don't know what the fundamental issue because people are different, right? People have different effort levels. So I didn't get what was wrong. I didn't no one has convinced me why there should not be a outcome gap. I think there will be. I think there's a distribution of people and there will always be an outcome gap. And and to be honest, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. So and because I mean we have all gone through school and we all see different effort levels of efforts and focus and strengths, right? Like I was strong in some areas, weak in others, right? And that's the same with everyone, right? And so to say, oh yeah, I'm going to be same as good as, in Spanish as like my wife was in, her language, no way. It's just that's not realistic.
So then doesn't the goal become, can the gap be can the gap not be widened, right? Can we make sure that kids are
I'm
not
okay with it
falling
being widened. Actually, I
further
want the outcome
behind,
gap
right?
to be widened. I want every kid to achieve as much as they possibly can in each of their areas. And that might mean that there's like huge gaps between kids, right?
Oh, let me
And
be
then
clear. Not that the accelerated kids are slowing down, but that folks are being supported to achieve
I'm good with that
more.
too, but it shouldn't be trimming off the top, right? Because
No, I
that
agree with you.
I think that was the thing that really I think got a lot of parents very upset, right? Was like, well, wait a second, we all sacrificed a lot for our kids to be here, and then now they're trimming off the top, and it was like, what is the point of that? So, anyways,
I hear you.
that's
Yeah.
as a parent, that's the thing that kind of puzzled me, right? I mean, it seemed like it's kind of like I don't know. But anyways, we're kind of being a dead horse here. But I'm just trying to understand like what the focus is. Is it opportunity gap or is it the outcome gap, right?
Yeah, happy to explain again. I mean, I do not see them as disaligned, right? So I do not think that it's a zero sum game. We can be helping our struggling students and not be holding kids back. So, again, we do offer a lot of advanced courses. I think we should be placing kids appropriately. There's a whole thing about the skip test, right? So making sure it's transparent. What is the skip test? When is it offered? What are the
Yeah.
expectations? To make sure that kids are placed appropriately, right? I think that appropriate placement helps everybody. It doesn't help a teacher to have a wide group of ability in certain
Mhm.
classrooms.
Yeah.
And so I think those types of placements are incredibly important.
Yeah. So I teach a machine learning and AI course, and I totally agree with you that because sometimes I have students who don't know how to program, and then I have some that got PhDs in there. It's like, whoa, that's like crazy hard. So I'm totally with you on that. Um, but speaking about AI, so what is your thoughts about AI in education and use of like ChatGPT and AI technology?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's something that the next board is going to have to confront in a lot of different ways. So, there have been strides made in AI being helpful in certain special ed contexts. I think that there's creative uses there. I think to me, this goes back to the priorities that we've talked about, right? And so, if there, I think a lot of it goes down to transparency. So, what are we using? Let's make sure that folks are trained in it. I
Mhm.
know that our district was presenting on AI at a statewide conference, so it's a place that I think we naturally can be a
Mhm.
leader, just given where we're situated. So I think what I would want to do is kind of walk the line between flexibility and kind of consistency. So making sure our teachers have room to explore while also having somewhat of consistent guidelines around the types of things that we would use it for,
Mhm.
to make sure that we're being safe with data and that we're not supplanting teachers. And so that's, I think, that just to let you know how I would approach it, that's where I'm going for. So flexibility for exploring, but making sure that we're really providing teachers with support in this, following leads of teachers who have found great uses for it, and also making sure that we're not jumping into something that without eyes wide open.
Mhm. So, when I went to school, and maybe I'm not sure when you went to school, but when I went to school, like there was like really heavy thing about cannot use a calculator, right? And it was like I'm looking back on that, how ridiculous it is because like in my work and all work that I know, nobody does long division in their head, right? Nobody, you know, does like everyone uses a calculator. In fact, if I had someone on my team who didn't calculate by hand, I would want them doing a spreadsheet because I wouldn't trust the math. I think they would get it wrong. And I kind of and in my work today, I use AI all the time. In fact, on my team here, like Devin and others, I insist everyone uses AI, everyone, right? Because I actually think it's the future, right? I think that it enhances our workforce, it makes everyone more productive. And when I went to back to school night, um, I was so disappointed when I talked to the teachers. I said, "Hey, how are you going to incorporate AI in your curriculum?" They said, "We're not. We're going to, students are not going to be allowed to use it." And yet, I think to me, it seems like we want the students today are going to be the workforce of the future, and they need to know how to use these tools. And I was just kind of surprised by how re reticent, at least my kids' teachers were, in terms of trying to use this technology. Yet I see it as the future, as like when I hire people, actually, I quiz them on how well they can use the AI tool, right? How well they understand it. And so these are that's the difference between if I hire someone or not, is how well can they use these models, these LLMs, right? And so I'm just a little bit worried that our schools are kind of behind um, in really educating and allowing our students to become proficient with this technology.
Yeah, I mean, they're two different skills, I think, right? One is using tools and the other is doing basic arithmetic, and I think they both have their places. So I think making sure that our kids know how to do arithmetic if they need to, and also how to do the tools, how to use the tools which they will be using in the workforce. And yeah, I think that they both, yeah, have their place.
Well, I'm good with that too, right? I mean, people should know how to do math
Yeah,
and know how to
right.
like spell and how to, so I'm all good with that. But it seems like there was no, and maybe it's just, too early, but there was no attempt, right? Now, when I talked to Skelly, right, about I went at the Mayfet parade, right? We walked together, and so I spent like I lobbied him like the whole parade, right, about like hey AI and education. And this was a couple years ago, and he was like, oh yeah, he was totally gung ho, like, oh yeah, we should do it. But then when I looked at like what's going on, there's nothing going on, and I was just kind of surprised that with especially given that this is Palo Alto and a lot of parents here are in tech, a lot of parents here are using AI, and this is probably the biggest um, you know thing that's come around in a while, and it's going to be profound for our kids, right, in their careers. And I'm just surprised that there's been so little done so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing what the teachers present at the conference in December on this, right? So yeah, I guess for my conversations, I think that this is it's an active area of exploration. And um, I don't know the ways in which it's entering the classroom yet, but I agree with you. I think this is something that I mean, as things develop, we need to make sure that we're incorporating what we can in a thoughtful way into the classroom. But again, being thoughtful and consistent about it is important.
But I know some teachers also, they will like say, oh, you can't use ChatGPT on this paper and this and that, um and so like, and also there's also sometimes false accusations where people say, oh, you use ChatGPT,
Mm-hmm.
and the kid didn't, right? And it's kind of like, and I can tell you as someone that's in this field, you cannot tell if someone used it or not. You really cannot.
Right. Right.
And so there's this kind of there's a bit of a witch hunt, and then there's this kind of saying, oh, you can't use it, even though I think we want kids to be proficient. So I guess it's maybe a hard question to answer, but I for one would love for there to be more emphasis on having people proficient. It's like learning how to use a computer, right? Like learning how to use a computer is like a kind of a life skill at this point. And I think using AI is gonna be like by the time like Devin is my age, right? He's gonna, you know, not knowing how to use AI is gonna be like a humongous handicap if he doesn't learn how to use AI, right? So anyways, yeah, anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean, what you're getting at is a couple different things, right? And so one is how do we, I think what I was first addressing is how do we use AI in the classroom? So how do we have it but I think you're getting at something else, which is that how do we train students to themselves use AI? And I think that's a really interesting pedagogical question of where do we build it in? Is it part of existing curriculum? Is it, do we do it like, you might have also had, I had a typing class, right, in school where it was like a
no, I
separate
didn't.
thing.
I just started typing and I
Okay.
got better and better at that. So
Okay, well, there you go. So, right, does it
yeah,
become part of something or is it its separate
yeah.
course? I think these are all really interesting questions depending on um, what we think is and I think this will change over time, what we think or what we want our students to learn.
Hmm. Okay. Um, yeah, and then anti-bullying, I think that's important. I mean I grew up in a really like rough area, and I got bullied a lot. I used to when I walked to school, I used to fear for my life. So I learned to run pretty fast. So I'm definitely very sympathetic to that. Although I don't know if in Palo Alto we have as much of it, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's other kind of bullying. But I used to get jumped, right? So, I'll lose my lunch money, right? So So I'm definitely very sympathetic to that. But is there really a big bullying issue going on right now in our schools?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that there is, you know, I mean, yes. So I think there are a lot of students who are being bullied. I know that
Mm,
there have been a lot of, different racial epithets that were used at Escondido and
mm,
then at Green. I think that it's something that, the school district has thought about. We have Unity Day, and there's
mm,
different. You probably know Escondido has that buddy bench, right? You can sit
mm,
on if you feel that you need a friend in that moment. So there's certainly been district-wide efforts, but I think that it's still a concern.
okay,
Having
okay.
a
Well, it's
child in middle
unfortunate.
school, very aware.
I always kind of perceive Palo Alto as like a lot better than when I grew up, or a place where I grew up. But maybe there's still that issue.
Sure, and it takes different forms, right? I mean, there's to go back to our previous conversation, there's a lot of cyberbullying, and there's a lot
Mm,
of what happens on group chats, and there's a lot of screenshots
mm,
sharing and people taking unflattering photos of others and sharing it. So, I mean, I think
mm,
that this kind of targeting can take really different forms. It doesn't mean that it's less harmful for somebody's mental health or their
mhm,
but they might, yeah, it might not be that they're physically being jumped for their lunch money.
mm. Okay, yeah. I remember like when I was in grade school, I would like walk, and this kid he towered over me, and I would jump on him all the time. It was just terrible. And then there's one time my dad decided to walk to school with me. He was tired of me getting beat up, right? I mean, I'd like be a bruised eye and all this kind of stuff.
Sorry, God.
And it's just where I grew up. It just that was standard par for the course. But I remember that one time my dad walked with me, and he confronted the kid that was bullying me, right? Like basically robbing me every day. And I remember like this kid towered over my dad. I guess this kid was held back or whatever, but he just towered over my dad. My dad's not a very tall guy. He towered over my dad, and my dad stood up to this guy and told the kid, "You can't keep doing this, right?" And I thought my dad was going to get like floored. I thought, he was such a big kid, and I seen like in the school I went to, I seen teachers get like hammered by kids, right? Just like really beat up by kids, and I thought my dad was toast, and but no, after that day, that kid never bothered me. I was like so shocked, I was like, wow, I never had the guts my dad had to confront someone like that, but it was like. Anyway, so I definitely understand the idea about bullying. So, Alison, I know we're kind of going overtime here, but anything else that we didn't cover that you want to address that any of the viewers might be interested in?
Um, I'll just, yeah, thanks for that question. And yeah, thanks for going over time. I know it's late at night on a
Yeah,
Sunday.
yeah. And by the way,
Um,
I'll ask Devin to link to your website and all that kind of stuff. So with this video, so you'll get some traffic, whatever.
okay. And yeah, so yeah, I guess lastly, I would just say that, it's a big opportunity. There are 3 open seats and no incumbents. And so I think given my, experience representing kids, coming from a policy perspective and good governance, I really am doing this to try to bring us together. I'm the only candidate that's endorsed both by the teachers and the classified staff union. And I have been, kind of walking the walk. So during this campaign, really making sure to form and keep relationships with everybody, because I think a lot of the issues I talked about are not just school issues, but community issues. When we talk about
Hmm.
safety, that's not just a school issue, that's a community issue. When we talk about trust and transparency, it's not just a school issue, it's a community issue. And I appreciate the hard questions on the academic opportunities for all pieces, because I think that stuff is tricky. And I think we have a long way to go to make sure that we are serving all students. And so, yeah, welcome any questions. If anybody else wants to talk to me in more depth about any piece of that, to please reach out, and hope to have folks votes in November.
Okay. Thank you, Alison, for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Have a good night.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Take care.